Hey everybody, before I get started, I just want to mention a couple of ways that you can engage with me on a more personal level. I have a few avenues set up and I keep focusing on one, and I figured why don't I make a short little video talking about all of them real quick before we get into these episodes. So first thing, Patreon. There's a link in the episode description, in every episode description to the Patreon, as well as a video on the feed called Major Announcement that has all the details of what each tier offers and how much they cost. I implore you to check that out. I offer a lot of cool shit for my patrons. Second thing, the Discord channel. There's also a Discord link in the episode description and in every episode description. I have multiple channels set up there for each show that I'm covering, and it's a great way to just engage with me. I have a channel set up for MMA talk as well. I'm a big MMA fan, so if you're an MMA fan, you can check that out as well. There's a link to the Discord in the episode description. And then lastly, the Facebook and Twitter. Social media. Follow me on there. I post news on there. When I say news, I mean like, hey, I'm stopping covering this show. Hey, I'm starting covering this show. Let me know what you think about this. I do live watches of things on Facebook where like I'll check in and say I'm watching so-and-so show, and then I'll like live comment while I'm watching it, and that'll be cool if maybe you watch that show too and you want to watch along with me, or you're watching it later and you will see my thoughts, which are usually pretty entertaining because I'm usually pretty high when I'm writing them. So check out all those links in each episode description, and let's talk about this episode. Peace.
One mic, one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. One mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. One mic. One mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, and today I'm here to talk about Season 2, Episode 3 of Showtime's Yellowjackets, entitled Digestif. That is teeth, T-I-F, tith at the end, although it does sound like digestive, and I'm sure that that's intentional, given the events of the last episode, or the end of the last episode. But digestif with an F, T-I-F, like this, is also a term for a drink that you would generally have after a good dinner, like, you know, like a nice wine or something like that. And I think if you give it about 2.2 seconds worth of thought, you can probably see how how having a nice glass of wine after a nice meal would feed into the episode title here. But I really enjoyed this episode. I loved exploring the after effects of the type of meal the girls had in the last episode. I like what they did with the bin scenes in this episode. I thought those were really good. I'm even intrigued by what they're doing with adult Lottie and Natalie, even though I think that plot line is starting to drag. But Melanie Lynskey, what an episode she had this week. My God. So let's talk about it. But first, I want to start with talking about Ben, because in this episode, we see Ben having these flashbacks to a time with a boyfriend prior to the events of the show. These flashbacks to these times, they had like this Stevie static. TV static, like we're watching a TV show. And I asked myself, I'm like, what's the significance of this? Like, why did they decide to make it kind of like a TV show? And I'm like, you know, is this gonna play a part in what we're seeing in these events? But, you know, as the episode progressed, I eventually just kind of settled in and just decided, like, okay, this is just a stylistic choice that they're making. And I liked it as a choice. I liked it that way. You know, it's a creative way to show flashbacks, utilizing this kind of like TV vibe. It works with the show thematically, given the nature of the opening credits, how that has a kind of like TV vibe. So that could have just been the thing there. And I'm like, okay, I'm fine with that. That's a pretty cool stylistic choice. Nobody else is doing that. It works. Cool with it. So I was already satisfied. But it turns out it was more than just a simple stylistic choice, I think, because in the final flashback, we see that Ben is hallucinating what could or should have been had he made some different choices. And for starters, that made me like the TV thing even more, because it's more than just a simple stylistic choice, because it continues to work thematically, because the idea of it being like a flashback on TV kind of adds to the fictionalization of it. Like, it feels kind of like a TV show in that he's imagining something that didn't actually happen. So it feels like fictionalized, dramatized. So I think having it feel like a TV show, like especially with the staticky kind of like flickering in and out, making it feel like an old TV show, like one of those CRT TVs, I think it really works, given the idea that like, oh, this didn't even really happen. We're seeing something that's kind of make-believe. So I thought that actually made it even more creative. So I thought that was really cool. And then secondly, how sad is that for the Ben character? Like, he loves this guy. He wants to live with him. But that's a colossal lifestyle decision for two gay men to make in the 2020s. In the 90s? That's a huge deal for him to essentially uproot his life and live openly like that. So he chickens out. He ends up on the plane. We know how that goes. Now he ends up with one leg. He's seemingly about to die, laying there thinking, if only I had followed my heart instead of making the safe choice, I'd be in a happy relationship with 2 legs, 3, and not here. And it's almost ironic because he didn't move in with his boyfriend. He talks about it being the safe choice, and he's like, in the alternate reality, he's like, oh, what if I'm not gonna make the safe choice? But it turns out that not going on the flight and moving in with the boyfriend would have been the actual literal safe choice. So like, I just thought they did some really great stuff with the Ben character in this episode. I found all of that to be pretty compelling. I thought it worked. I thought the TV stuff was cool. I like what they did with his goal of being extra safe and extra careful. Ultimately ended up putting him in a position that's probably going to result in his death. I'm surprised he made it out of this episode, to be honest. And I just think that I like the irony. Really good stuff there. Moving on to Taissa. She's getting crazier in both timelines. Young Taissa doesn't remember scarfing down Jackie's face, so she wastes perfectly good cracklings by puking it all up. Quick side note on this scene. I can't believe Mari asked about breakfast. They picked Jackie clean. Like, granted, she was small, but y'all gotta be full. Like, it's no way you need breakfast in the morning. We also learned that Night Taissa is a lot more lucid. Well, I can't say Night Taissa is a lot more lucid. Night Taissa was never not lucid. Regular Taissa isn't. But Night Taissa is a lot more willing to interact with regular Taissa's environment than I think we knew up to this point. She allows Van to tag along with her, provided that she unties her, which, I mean, Night Taissa's making deals and shit, so she's obviously with it to some degree. And as they walk, she refers to the person that she follows as him. This person with no eyes, a dude who I said was like emo Vincent Vega last week. She then refers to a her, and Van's like, who is that? She's like, regular Taissa. I don't know what she said, but it was like regular Taissa. And then she doesn't respond when Van is like, well, if he is the emo guy and her is the person who I think I'm talking to, who the fuck are you? And she doesn't answer, and I didn't expect her to, but I think that's going to be an interesting turn of events to kind of work toward finding out who it is that is possessing Taissa. And I think this entity is behind everything that we're seeing, so it'll be interesting to see who that is. Night Taissa leads Van to the symbol, and the symbol got a lot of screen time in this episode, didn't it? It's like, we're starting to get a little bit more FaceTime with the symbol. We're learning more about it. I'm really enjoying that aspect of the show as well. It's almost functioning kind of like a sign or a beacon. And, that's kind of what I guess theorized last week, that it's kind of like positioned at places that, around things that the girls are meant to see. It felt like that in this scene where Night Taissa leads Van there. But Van wakes her up, and ultimately nothing comes of it. We don't see the end of that scene. Or, we see the end of the scene, but it doesn't come to a satisfying conclusion, that scene. Let's see. In present day, Taissa sees the symbol on Simone's hand at the hospital, and given how lucid Night Taissa is, it really feels like Taissa probably did that herself, like wrote the symbol on her hand. But it was, obviously it would have been Night Taissa, not regular Taissa. But moving on with our older version of Awake Taissa, she later sees Night Taissa, the adult version, a reflection in the mirror. And I couldn't tell what words Night Taissa's mouth was motioning and trying to say. Captions didn't even tell me what it was. It said something like unintelligible or something to that degree. It looked like she was saying go something. I'm not sure. But then she makes a symbol like across her eye that looks like the scarring that's on Van's face. So I'm thinking that she's telling her to go meet with Van. She leaves out of there and immediately calls Jessica, who I think everyone else thinks she's dead. I don't think she's dead. Like, again, I don't see a dead body. I'm not thinking the person's dead. We saw her pass out and her car slowly roll into something. I don't think Misty put something in her that was going to kill her. I think Jessica's still alive. She's probably just like incapacitated in a hospital somewhere. Somebody probably found her, took her in. She's probably laid up. Phone probably dead. But she calls Jessica, Taissa does, And I guess presumably she's probably going to be heading to wherever Adult Van is. So that's probably how we're going to end up meeting Adult Van, probably next week. Let's see, moving on to Natalie. Young Natalie decides she's going to take Jackie's remains to the plane site, and they're going to bury her when the ground softens after the winter. And when she gets there, she tells Jackie she's lucky to be dead. She apologizes for scarfing her up. And then this giant white moose thing comes, and she shoots it, but it doesn't die. And it like rams into the door of the plane. It shakes everything, and it made me wonder. It never comes back. It made me wonder if she hallucinated that, because it felt like this episode kind of dealt with the after effects of what happened with Jackie. And it makes me wonder if eating Jackie is kind of like triggered hallucinations, because it seems like everybody's hallucinating in this episode, right? I've already talked about Ben. Thaisa just hallucinating. No matter the time period, young, old, awake, sleep, Thaisa's hallucinating all the time. And then, I don't know, the moose doesn't come back. It just made me wonder if there's any possibility that she might be hallucinating that. So, in present day, Natalie is still at Lottie's little cult compound, and I think just saying that phrase alone should let you know that Natalie is way more bought into Lottie's shit than we would like for her to be, and than she would admit. Like, she can talk shit and make fun all she wants, but she's still fucking there. And she participates in one of their little activities toward the end of the episode, where she has this little thing with the fork girl, and she's even before the scene starts. Well, I don't know why I'm just all over the place. Obviously, the scene had already started. But before the purpose of the scene, the activity had started, we see Natalie sitting there. She's got like one of the heliotrope blankets draped over her shoulders. Like, listen, if I'm at some sort of cult event and I don't want to be there, rest assured I'm not wearing any part of their fucking uniform voluntarily. Natalie's fucking bought in. Like, and I'm a fan of it as a fan of the show who wants to see something like that. But that's not a good look for the Natalie character. Her being Natalie, and Lottie have this interesting conversation about bees, where Lottie tells her about how when a new queen bee is born, it kills the other potential queen bees so that the whole group can live. And she's like, it's not brutal, it's just how they live, it's just life. And I certainly hope you guys came to the same understanding that I did, that Lottie is connecting the bee thing with what they did in the wilderness and kind of using the bee analogy as justification. Kind of like, oh, the queen bee had to kill the other bees just for everybody else to live. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's kind of what we were meant to take away from that. The episode later ends with, you guessed it, a hallucination. A hallucination theme in this episode. Lottie thinks she sees blood in her little bee container. I don't know. It's not a beehive. I don't know what you call those things. And all the bees are dead. I have some delicious raspberry jam that looks exactly like that blood, for what it's worth. But we hear some words in French right before Lottie kind of snaps out of it. And there's just someone there who asks her, I think he said, like, are you ready for lunch or something like that. But I believe it's the same French words from season 1. Like, if you remember, it was a scene where, like, I think it was Lottie. She was sitting by, like, a window, and she starts tripping balls. She's speaking French. Nobody even knows what she's saying. Jackie, I think it was, recognized that she was speaking French. And they're like, what did she say? She's like, I don't know. I don't even fucking go to this shit. And she said something like, she's like, she wants blood, or something like that. She says some more shit about blood. Like, it's something like he or she wants blood. And if this is the same phrase that Lottie hears as an adult now, it could be that this entity or whatever wants blood. And I feel like this is how the show is going to transition these girls from essentially eating Jackie out of necessity and convenience. Like, oh, like, we didn't plan to eat her. Like, we were going to bury her. The snow put the body out. And now we just got some nice sauteed meat. Like, why not, lay it over bed of rice? Like, they could headcanon, wrap their head around how this is okay. But I think, like, this whole thing with the he wants blood or it wants blood or whatever this is, this French phrase that keeps being spoken, is how they're going to move the girls from what happened with Jackie to a more intentional and purposeful, like, sacrificing of something to whatever this entity is that wants blood. So I'm really interested if that's where I think that if that's where they're going. I am interested. I feel kind of certain. Like, I don't know. It it works given what they put on the screen. So I kind of feel like that's how they're going to transition the girls into a more intentional eating of people. And if I were Coach Ben, I'd probably start marinating myself right now because you ain't gonna make it, bro. So you might as well make their next meal as enjoyable as possible. Get out some Lawry's and some some cumin. I even put in my Facebook thing, I was like, wouldn't it be ironic if Ben ends up dying and he ends up in a chowder? A chowder with cumin? Because, like, isn't Misty talking about, didn't she talk about, like, a stew or something like that? Like, the more I think about it, the more I think Coach Ben's going to die and they're going to put him in a stew or a chowder. Moving on to Shauna. Shauna and Jeff have a pretty sad conversation, I think, about why she cheated on him with Adam. She talks about, not wanting to feel like this boring version of herself. She talks about the excitement of not knowing what was going to happen next. I like the little thing where he's like, it's the strawberry lube, and the waiter is just like, no, not a conversation I need to be a part of. They get carjacked, leaving the restaurant that they were having this conversation at, and Shauna actually subdues the gunman. Well, not subdues the gunman, but enough to get the gun from him. And Jeff lets the guy get away in their car. And Shauna gets mad that Jeff let the guy take the minivan, their shitty little minivan, as if her little Batman performance was normal. And later, she steps her crazy up a notch, and she actually tracks down the van via, I'm assuming, like a Find My Friends, but maybe she has a fucking air tag in the van. She tracks it to a chop shop where it's at, and she holds the owner at gunpoint in an absolutely fucking awesome scene. Like, I love the intensity of this scene. How they framed her really tight, how intense she was, how she described the peeling back of the skin. It sounded like how you peel the membrane off the back of a rack of ribs. Like, the detail in that. It was such a good scene, man. Her feeling so unhinged, so ready to do this. Like, it became clear that Shauna is very much starting to revert back into the person that I think we have yet to see her become in the wilderness, but who I think she's going to become. A lot more primal, with a strong desire to hurt people that she's struggling to keep in. Like, I'm loving it. Absolutely eating it up, no pun intended. I just thought this scene was so good, man. So good. I don't even think I breathed. Like, I was sitting there like, just like, what is going to happen right now? And the delivery of the monologue was just, it was awesome. Where am I? Oh, in the past, the girls decide they're going to throw a baby shower for Shauna. And when she's gifted a towel, like a little, I guess like a burp cloth, it has the symbol on it that was written on, I believe, by, it wasn't Lottie. It was that girl, Crystal. We're going to be talking about her in a minute. When it's gifted to her, her being Shauna, her nose starts bleeding and birds fall out of the sky. Now, I don't know what that means, but like I said, when you couple it with Lottie's French words, I have an idea, and I'm going to save it for my thoughts along with my thoughts about Crystal here, which is coming up right after I have a couple sentences here on Misty. So the Misty stuff, especially Misty as an adult, I mean, not really enjoying it that much so far. It's okay. They question Randy, who we've seen Randy. The hit him stuff I thought was kind of funny. I laughed when she originally was like, hit him. I'm like, okay, you're out of control. But I'm not really a fan of the stuff with Walter. It feels like it's dragging a little bit. It's a little bit too cute. I don't know. And then after the whole Cyrano thing over the phone with the earpiece, they learned that Randy has seen Lottie's little cult shit at the motel. And I'm like, this whole scene, which is only mildly funny, like, really, nothing really came out of that. Misty and Walter learned virtually nothing because they don't even know who that is. They're like, okay, some people wearing purple was there. Cool. We learned actually nothing because we already know a lot of these people were there. So, like, the whole sequence with questioning Randy was kind of just done for, like, shits and giggles, and it wasn't that funny to me. I don't know. It was just okay. And then when we last see them, after all the time we spent with the Randy situation, the only time we actually get real information is just a picture of this credit card receipt where Walter, well, we don't get a picture, we get a text, so we see Misty's phone. When Walter hacks the vending machine's credit card, and he finds out the card is from Cherry Corners, New York. So it looks like Misty's season 2 road trip will swap out Natalie for Walter, and they'll be heading to Cherry Corners, New York, probably in the next episode. So I want to wrap up with a couple of quick thoughts. I thought the opening shot of Jackie's hand picked clean, like, that's gonna be a tough one to top for the season. That was a fucking, if not for the whole show, that was a sick fucking opening shot, man. That was cold. That was cold. I love the idea that Jeff's idea of spontaneity is churning butter in Virginia. I'm just like, okay, well now I know why she cheated on you. Cause like if that's your big moment to show how spontaneous you are, you're like, hey, let's go churn butter in Virginia. You know what? I'm just gonna go fuck somebody else right now. like what a terrible idea. There's a lot of talk about blood and sacrificing, and no, actually, you know what? I'm gonna save this one for last. There's a moment where Mari hears dripping. And there's been several kind of like things that have happened that we've never gotten explanations for it, and that the show kind of breezed over. And I'm wondering what that is. So like, she hears the dripping. She's like, does anyone hear that dripping? No one fucking answers. The thing about who shit in the pee bucket, that never got resolved. Like, is there like, I don't know, some ghost entity there? We'll get into it. Walter's got so much money that he can afford to just put up randos in nursing homes just for shits and giggles. Like, what does he do for a living? Because, geez. Jeff asked Shauna how she got the van back, and we don't see her answer. Do you guys think she told him the truth or not? I'm thinking no. And then, not lastly, but these last two things, I'm going to speak about them collectively. This is going to be the last time I talk about the new girls who were on the season. You know, I've accepted the fact that these were background characters who were, you know, given non-speaking roles last year. They've chosen to make them prominent this season, which, again, I do firmly believe, and I stand tall on the idea that I think that's a bad idea to introduce new characters or to put them at the forefront in this type of show in that setting. Like, if you do it the adult version, fine. But in the wilderness version, bad idea. But I said in the video for episode 1, I'm like, is these motherfuckers even real? I'm like sitting in a place where I'm like 90% sure Crystal's not real. Like, has anyone interacted with that girl other than Misty? How convenient is it that the only girl that's interacting with Misty is the only person who treats her nice, and they have a shit ton in common? And now in this episode, what have I said is the large theme that's kind of widespread throughout this episode? Hallucinations. Like, I don't buy that Crystal is real. Like, I just don't. Like, if one of you guys like know one of the other characters talk to Crystal, maybe I'll be like, okay. But right now, I feel like, just off the top of my head thinking about it, she's only talked to Misty. So I don't know. And then lastly, Lottie refers to Shauna's baby as a him. And I have to say that my number one most intriguing mystery that I care the absolute most about more than anything else on this show is finding out what happens to Shauna's baby. They can literally do anything, so I'm really curious to see where they land. And this is my last thing. There's a lot of talk about blood and sacrificing, like I said a moment ago, and I'm just wondering, do you think they might end up sacrificing Shauna's baby to the entity that's the he wants blood or it wants blood or whatever? I'm talking about moving from a eating people by circumstance to sacrificing people intentionally and then eating them later. You're not going to get a whole lot of not eating out of a baby, but like I can't imagine them doing that on this show. How do you even visually show something like that? But I really feel like we're moving towards sacrifices. There's been a theme of blood and sacrifices. We have no idea what's gonna happen to this baby. I don't know. I'm just putting it out there. I feel like they're probably not gonna do that because I just don't think there's any way you could put that on TV in a way that's acceptable. But I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there to see what happens. But yeah, I don't think Crystal's real either. So let me know what you guys thought about this episode in the comments. Like I said, I loved it. Great stuff with Ben. Melanie Linsky fucking crushed this episode. I am intrigued on the whole idea of whether or not this entity is going to end up causing the girls to make sacrifices. The hallucinations I'm interested in. All this stuff I thought was really, really, really good. So let me know what you guys thought in the comments, and I will see you guys next week for episode 4. And until then, peace.